Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made history today, becoming only the second foreign leader to deliver his third address to a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress. Winston Churchill was the first. And the Israeli Prime Minister today seized the occasion to issue a dire warning about the fate of the Jewish people, the stability of the Middle East, and the perils of American diplomacy that he sees as dangerously out of touch with reality. For his part, President Obama said he didn't bother to watch, but that he read the transcript and saw nothing new. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Ed Henry's at the White House. He has the president's dismissive reaction and the political fallout from the prime minister's historic speech. But we begin with Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen on a forceful and passionate plea from an ally who feels abandoned by the White House. Good evening, James.
Brett, good evening. Invoking the specter of the Holocaust and warning that the world again stands at a fateful crossroads, Prime Minister Netanyahu urged the Congress to in effect bypass President Obama and assert greater control over the nuclear negotiations with Iran. In grim, often gripping fashion, the Israeli Prime Minister warned that the U.S. and 5 other countries negotiating with Iran are preparing to leave the Islamic regime's vast nuclear infrastructure intact, including 5,600 centrifuges enriching uranium.
It's a very bad deal. We're better off without it.
Worse still, Netanyahu said the deal would only last 10 years or so, after which Iran's remaining 15,000 centrifuges could be reactivated.
Now, I want you to think about that. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons, and this with full international legitimacy.
Several dozen Democrats and all members of the Obama administration boycotted the session, but Netanyahu still played to a packed House chamber and a global audience. He portrayed Iran as a formidable regional power, already potent in Gaza, Baghdad, Beirut, Damascus, and Sana'a. And he warned that Shiite Iran will never partner with the U.S. to defeat the Sunni terrorists of ISIS. Rather, Netanyahu cast the mullahs of the Islamic regime and the marauders of the Islamic State as kindred spirits, pointedly using the very terminology President Obama eschews.
Iran and ISIS are competing for the crown of militant Islam. So when it comes to Iran and ISIS, the enemy of your enemy is your enemy.
In remarks to the pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC Monday night, White House National Security Advisor Susan Rice pre-butted Netanyahu's address by arguing that negotiators cannot realistically insist that Iran dismantle its entire enrichment apparatus.
The plain fact is, no one can make Iran unlearn the scientific and nuclear expertise it already possesses.
A special arms control advisor to Secretary of State Clinton, Robert Einhorn was a member of the U.S. delegation to the nuclear talks with Iran.
I still think it's possible to have a good deal, one that permits a very limited enrichment capacity.
The nuclear negotiators are working to finalize a deal with Iran by March 24th. By then, the results of the Israeli elections, in which Prime Minister Netanyahu is standing for re-election, will be 1 week old. Brett.
James, thank you. Many Democratic lawmakers boycotted the Netanyahu speech. Some also excoriated Republicans for arranging it. But it was President Obama who had the most to say about it. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has that part of the story tonight.
For someone who said he did not bother to watch the speech, President Obama had an awful lot to say, offering an 11-minute rebuttal to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
I did have a chance to take a look at the transcript, and as far as I can tell, there was nothing new.
Beyond the transcript, it appears the president also read some talking points from his longtime political advisor, David Axelrod, who sent a series of tweets that mirrored the president's criticism, declaring, quote, "Speech broke no new ground, nor offered realistic path short of war, not a plan. Eager for Bibi to make the turn and share his plan for preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon." The president, who scheduled a teleconference with European leaders about Ukraine during Netanyahu's speech, picked up Axelrod's theme in comments later.
The prime minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
Interesting, since the president will not tell the American people details about the deal Secretary of State John Kerry is negotiating in Geneva.
We don't know your plan.
This is what's clear, as the president has a very clear strategy that he has laid out.
The president and his aides pushed back on Netanyahu, even though he started his speech with praise.
Some of what the president has done for Israel might never be known because it touches on some of the most sensitive and strategic issues that arise between an American president and an Israeli prime minister.
Though Netanyahu's pointed criticism of the president's talks with Iran left House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi claiming she nearly cried throughout the speech because she was insulted.
I was near tears because I love Israel very much.
Democrats who skipped the speech piled on the prime minister for demanding a better deal with Iran.
He's like the child who says, I want to go to Disneyland every day, eat ice cream and drink Coca-Cola every day, and not go to school.
While a senior Democrat took the opposite approach, issuing a warning to the president last night at AIPAC.
I am not intimidated by anyone, not Israel's political enemies, and not my political friends when I believe they're wrong.
Bob Menendez suggesting there he's ready to help pass a bill that would make sure this deal would have to get approved by Congress and can't get pushed through by executive order. Also suggesting Democrats may join Republicans in pushing more sanctions over the president's objections. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thanks.